Had she heard something moving? No, it was nothing. She accessed one of her email accounts and typed Kolya's email address. She typed a quick message. Attaching Cuzas' plans for 15 towns, including Chernavoda, Romania, Oak Harbor, Ohio, Buchanan, New York, Fort Pierce, Florida. Then she felt the touch on her shoulder. Enjoying yourself? A voice purred behind her. Cuzas' voice. Before he pinned her arms, she hit send. Nikolai Ivanovich Petrov, known to his friends as Kolya, shook his blond head, scrolled down the screen, and pondered his options. If he sent Teo Lorenzo to Pennsylvania Station to watch for a mysterious woman in black, Kolya'd catch hell from his boss, Margaret Bradford, head of the ECA, an agency that few knew existed, who would consider his sending a new agent a mile uptown to meet a non-existent informant to be an abuse of authority. Then again, Kolya could simply send Teo out for a dozen bagels from the deli 2 blocks away. Not that Kolya wanted a bagel. He just wanted Teo, whose face peered with unrelenting enthusiasm over Kolya's shoulder, to go away. Kolya didn't dislike Teo, but he hated this part of the job, the waiting while another agent was in danger. He preferred the active role, to be the one at risk, but right now his role was providing backup and technical support. Gina was scheduled to check in at 8. Just in case, Kolya had monitored the phones and the computer since midnight. On the other hand, Teo had slept until 7. Easy for Teo, who hadn't lived through the other attempts to penetrate Cuzas' network. Kolya vividly remembered Vasily, who had played violin, and whom Kolya had persuaded to spy on Cuza. 3 days later, Vasily had been found with a stake through his body. Normally, the piano jazz emanating from his computer, Eugene Maslov, a fellow Russian immigrant from St. Petersburg, playing The Masquerade is Over, would have a calming effect. Not now. You know, you worry too much. Maybe he'd just shoot Teo. They were holed up in a shabby 2-bedroom apartment in the West Village, designated the New York office. The computers were state-of-the-art, but the chairs and table were plastic, and the faded green carpet smelled of mold, dust, and something undefined. Maybe cat urine. But the apartment didn't bother him particularly. He'd lived in worse. It was Alex. He hadn't seen her for 2 months, and he missed her, her sense of humor, her intelligence, and the warmth of her presence. He could almost hear her voice mocking him. You mean you miss the sex, right? As if his thought had prompted it, his phone buzzed. You up? He texted back. 4 hours. Court today? A response came immediately. Case postponed. Drag. Talk? Can't now. Later. Call when you can. Love. Gotta run. He sent his love back, set the phone down, and returned his attention to the computer. Phone calls and texts were a poor substitution, under the best of times. It was one of the drawbacks of his line of work, the only reason he'd ever considered changing professions. Still, he wasn't ready to give up the game. Teo leaned over the computer and tried to tap a request onto the keyboard. Don't fuck with the computer, Teo. Kolya decided to send Teo on an errand to the kitchen instead of on a tour of the wilds of Manhattan. Could you check if there's any coffee left? He picked up a New York Mets mug and thrust it without ceremony into Teo's hands. 2 teaspoons sugar, right? Teo asked. Correct. Kolya, like many Russian Jews, had a sweet tooth. He usually didn't indulge in desserts, keeping in shape was too important, but he did like to sweeten his coffee. Teo disappeared. Maslov ended, and Kolya switched to Bill Evans on the keyboard, Eddie Gomez on bass, an interpretation of Autumn Leaves. Kolya had played a variation of the tune on Alex's piano 2 nights before he'd left for New York. He missed the piano, but this was the village after all. He'd managed to find a bar where he could occasionally spend a few hours improvising on jazz.